So this is me and Drew, and we are talking about how YouTube is a dying platform. I am the affirmative, and Drew is the negative. So I'm going to get started. Broadcast yourself. This is the slogan that has been on the front lines of YouTube's creation since 2005. However, upon investigation, it is clear that this slogan no longer represents what the platform wishes to uphold and how they handle business with their users and creators. YouTube has drastically changed in its values into something entirely different. YouTube is no longer the place a viewer goes to watch a simple, funny video online like it was. YouTube now only favors videos which can more easily bring them in advertisement revenue, and if you do not fit the bill for certain advertisers, then all of your work is no longer favored by their algorithms. Also, another point to make is that their community is ill-favored by their system of copyright striking, and all of their livelihood is put at risk through this ill-favorment. Although their view count and usage has never been higher, it is my criterion that YouTube no longer wishes that their original creators be the front lines of their work and would rather favor corporate work, which they can easily put advertisements on. Clearly, YouTube, as it was, is a very much dying platform. Their values have changed from broadcast yourself to bring us in money. Concerning my first advantage, there are many different announcements and deals that YouTube has been public about, which clearly goes against the values of its creators. The Verge talks about how by 2012, creators like Shellberg, better known as PewDiePie, they were leaving school or their jobs to focus on YouTube full time. He told a Swedish news outlet that he was getting more than 2 million views a month, boasting just over 300,000 subscribers. It goes on to talk about how between 2011 and 2015, YouTube was a haven for comedians, filmmakers, writers, and performers who were able to make the work they wanted and earn a lot of money in the process. Clearly a very good platform for the creators. Now that YouTube has reached mainstream success, in many ways it still felt wide open. Anyone could still upload almost anything they wanted without much input from YouTube itself. However, their values soon began to change, putting less emphasis on original content which their creators worked so hard to make. In October 2012, YouTube announced that its algorithm had shifted to prefer videos with longer watch times over higher view counts. This meant that viral videos like David After Dentist and Charlie Bit My Finger, which defined YouTube in its earliest days, weren't going to be recommended as much as longer videos that kept people glued to the site. Then there was original content. In 2011, YouTube invested $100 million into more than 50 premium channels from celebrities and news organizations, betting that adding Hollywood talent and authoritative news sources to the platform would drive up advertising revenue and expand YouTube to an even wider audience. In 2016, personalities like Philip DeFranco, comedians like Jesse Ridgway, and dozens of other popular creators started noticing that their videos were being demonetized, a term popularized by the community to indicate when something had triggered YouTube's system to remove advertisements from a video, depriving them of revenue. Clearly, YouTube stopped favoring the original creators, which made YouTube a unique place to begin with, instead favoring corporate practices which could more easily bring them in advertisement revenue. Concerning my second advantage, one of the biggest problems with the platform today is that the copyright claim system is extremely unpolished and it allows for abusement quite easily. For those who do not know, the copyright claim system is in place to make sure that original creators of content get to protect their content and no other entities can make money off of it. Basically, if a YouTube channel posts content made by a person who has copyrighted it, it cannot be, they can claim it to make sure that they don't make money off of it, and their work remains theirs. It sounds good on paper. If a YouTube channel makes 3 different pieces of content which are copyright claimable, their channel is completely shut down. Again, it sounds practical on paper, but upon investigation, it is extremely abusable. In one instance, an anonymous blackmailer caught at least 2 YouTubers in a scheme involving cash ransoms and copyright laws. Last week, both creators shared stories of how their YouTube channels were being threatened with a 3rd copyright strike and the possible termination of their channels from anonymous from an anonymous extortionist. The scammer offered to reverse the strikes in payment of Bitcoin to his Bitcoin wallet. Once we receive our payment, the blackmailer wrote, we will cancel both strikes on your channel. The YouTuber, which was... Sorry?
No, so I'm just going to transition myself into the cross-examination just so we're okay on timing, just because we're at 5.5 minutes now.
I thought it was 6 minutes. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Go ahead.
So for my cross-examination, I think you made a lot of good points, Caleb, but I first want to start with one of the statements that you made. You mentioned that YouTube's values have changed and that you can't go and watch a funny video, and I would have to get your input on that because I disagree, because when somebody uses the platform of YouTube and such, you, the user, you're the one that's searching up the videos yourself. You're typing in what you are looking to see. So I think that if you want to go watch a funny video, you certainly can, and I want to get your input on that.
Concerning that statement, I think it was more around the sense that YouTube is no longer the place that favors the funny videos. It was in concerns to how the algorithm was no longer favoring the shorter videos and was rather favoring the longer videos, which could bring them in more ad revenue. That's what it was talking about.
Gotcha. Thank you. My second question, real quick. You mentioned algorithms, and algorithms, I think, actually are a really good technical. It's a great use of technology, and you mentioned that algorithms push almost like a certain agenda of videos. And I think that from my perspective, algorithms basically, they know what kind of videos you watch on a daily basis, and they track that, and therefore they push those videos onto your platform, which I think actually quite a good thing because it knows what you want to watch. It knows what your style is. And I want to kind of get your input on that, man.
Okay, so when it comes to algorithms, the thing that people and the creators do not like is that algorithms are not people. And the thing about YouTube, of what it used to be, is that it was broadcast yourself. And it seems it's just not, because, in the sense that YouTube was a lot about like watching a kid get a Xbox on his birthday or watching Charlie Bit My Finger, a classic video. It just feels it felt to the creators very corporate, and it didn't feel right. It feels like they aren't being taken. They're being taken for granted. And that's why, although algorithms are kind of the new wave of the future, their algorithms weren't good enough to make up for what the treatment that they were getting from the beginning.
Got it. Thank you. Well, I will go into my 6-minute negative speech.
Cool.
So Caleb mentioned the subject here is whether or not YouTube is a dying platform. And Caleb is arguing that, in fact, it is a dying platform, and I'm here to tell you why it's not a dying platform. And first, I want to kind of start with the definition. Obviously, I think most of us know what YouTube is, but I think it's good to kind of refresh our memory. According to dictionary.com, YouTube is where you can upload a video of someone or something to the video sharing website known as YouTube. Now, secondly, in my argument, I'm going to make several different arguments from several different sources. And I think for my best interest, I'm going to use a lot of statistical analysis because I'm arguing that it's not a dying platform. And I think at the end of the day, YouTube is, their goal is to be profitable. Their goal is to be, financially stable. So looking at some monetary statistics, I think will better serve us. So my first argument or my first reason is going to come from Oberlo.com of May of 2020. And I want to go through 10 different statistics that are very important to me. The first one is that YouTube has 2 billion users worldwide. Now, the second one is that 79% of internet users have their own YouTube account. The third, almost 8 out of 10 marketers consider YouTube to be the most effective video marketing platform. Fourthly, 94% of American users between the age of 18 and 44 old access YouTube at least once a month. Fifth, everyday people watch 1 billion hours of YouTube on YouTube. Sixth, 62% of businesses use YouTube as a channel to post video content and promote their business. 7, more than 70% of YouTube watch times come from mobile devices. 8, 90% of people say they discover new brands or products on YouTube. 9, 400 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute worldwide. And 10, 90% of US digital video viewers use YouTube, the most popular channel for digital video consumption. And I only have so long to make my argument, but I just want to kind of scan over that real quick. I read a lot of things and I read them really fast, but when you look at all the statistics, clearly those are all positive and upward trending. It shows an upward trending market for YouTube at this current state that it's in. 2 billion users worldwide if you've got 2 billion users accessing this platform, I mean, how can it not be profitable, right? So I think those statistics really define my argument. Now, secondly, I want to talk about an article that comes from The Verge of February of 2020, and it states that YouTube generated nearly $5 billion in ad revenue in the last 3 months. Google revealed today as part of their parent company fourth quarter earnings report. This is the first report under the new CEO. It states that on an annual basis, Google says YouTube generated $15 billion last year and contributed roughly 10% to all Google revenue. Those figures make YouTube's ad business nearly 1/5 of the size of Facebook and more than 6 times larger than all of Amazon-owned Twitch, which I think we're all familiar with Twitch. Now I want to kind of move on to my third argument, and this comes from fastcompany.com. It states that YouTube is growing very fast. Viewing times are up 60% last year. Now, 60% up in viewing times is huge. I think if any company can grow 15% a year, they're hitting their quota. They're up 60% in the last year, and I think a lot of that has to do with COVID-19. A lot of us are stuck inside the house, and so people, their resources to entertain themselves have gone way down. And I think, just this one statistic really defines my argument and proves that it is actually not a dying platform and that it's actually really doing well currently with the world that we're living in. Also, I want to talk about the average mobile YouTube viewing session. It's more than 40 minutes, up more than 50% year over year. And that's pretty crazy because I know when I first was introduced to YouTube, a lot of my videos were real short, but now the average viewing is 40 minutes long. That's incredible. Imagine how many ads are going to get pushed through that 40-minute long session. And all those ads, all they do is get revenue and make more money for the company and the creators. Now, secondly, I don't have much time left, but I want to talk about how much YouTube pays their content creators. And this comes from onehourprofessor.com. It states that YouTube typically pays 55% of the ad revenue to the publisher and keeps the other 45%. On average, you can expect to make between $1 to $2 per every 1,000 views on YouTube. And I want to get into a personal creator that I'm into. He makes just kind of random content. His name's Danny Duncan. And I've been following him for quite some time. And he grew up in Florida with a single mother and financially was not stable. Didn't have money in his pocket. His mom did not do well. He got on YouTube, developed content, and now he owns property all over the world and is a multi-7-figure businessman. And that money directly came from YouTube. And furthermore, because of using YouTube as a platform, he's been able to make third-party money. And what I mean by that is that he has merchandise, like most YouTubers do. And he's gotten so big that Zumiez, the clothing store in the mall, has incorporated his merchandise into their store. And I just think that even more so backs up my argument and shows that YouTube has so many different routes and ways that you can make money and that it's not a dying industry. So I think where we're at right now, that puts me right at my time, and I don't want to go over, so I'll pass it off to you, Caleb, to cross-examine.
Caleb, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, in concerns, you're talking about how the algorithm and how it makes for like a better platform. Do you know if the algorithm favors like almost every kind of content, or is it just specific content creators that they greenlight for ad revenue?
So to answer that question, Caleb, I actually didn't talk about algorithm to my understanding and the arguments that I made, but I will answer that question. Algorithm was more assuming that you were talking about. But yes, to answer that question, like I stated before, algorithm, the software that's based off what you view. So if Caleb views a lot of sporting videos, it knows that, it tracks that. So the next time that you were to log on to YouTube, it's going to push those similar videos, which I think is good because rather than you having to go out and go to the search box and type in, highlights from blah, blah, blah game, it knows what you're already interested in. It's going to be right there sitting in front of you. So you don't have to go out of your way to go, find those videos.
Cool. In concerns to you're talking about Danny Duncan. I mean, I watch him too. He's a pretty cool guy. But you talked about like how he has made a living off of his content on YouTube. But do you know if Danny Duncan actually makes the money directly from YouTube, or is it more of his clothing brand that he uses for ad revenue or uses for money?
So I think you actually honestly asked a great question right there. And obviously, no, he doesn't make all of his revenue from himself. But what YouTube has done, Danny Duncan started his platform on YouTube. That's where he began. And he got all of these viewers and people that began to follow him. Well, once he realized that he had such a big following, he then branched out of YouTube and began to make merchandise, began to go on tours, began to sell products. So obviously he's got revenue coming in from more than just YouTube. But if it wasn't for YouTube, his name would have never been broadcast on the internet, and therefore he would never been able to sell merch as popular as he is able to sell merch. So that's kind of my take on that.
Solid. Thank you. And I believe I go into a 3-minute affirmative rebuttal, unless I'm mistaken. That's good?
Yes.
All right, solid. It is up to the affirmative to define the terms in a specific way, is it not? Owing to the fact that I made my criterion about how YouTube has changed and is dying as it was as a platform, this is what the terms of the debate were. However, that's not what my opponent spoke about. He spoke about terms in which of view count. This is not what the affirmative defined as the terms of the debate. I spoke about how YouTube was dying as a platform, how it was, and how it encounters its content creators, and that YouTube now is no longer the YouTube that we knew back in 2005 and onward. Also, he spoke about how a certain content creator, Danny Duncan, made his money. Here's the thing. In terms of how I was viewing how YouTube was dying as a platform, Danny Duncan is actually a prime example of how YouTube has changed greatly. The thing is that Danny Duncan has almost no ad revenue from YouTube. He doesn't make almost any of his money off of YouTube itself. He actually made his Virginity Rocks clothing brand to great success. However, again, he doesn't make any of his money off of YouTube itself, which is unfortunate because back in the day, that's his content would be exactly what all of the algorithms would have favored. YouTube would have definitely put that at the front line of their content that they recommended. However, now it has greatly changed, and it would go more for a family-friendly content viewing than what Danny Duncan is, and his content is more catered towards young adults. So with all of this in mind, it is clear that, one, my opponent did not obey the terms of, or did not stay within the terms of the argument, which the criterion, which I as the affirmative defined. And this is a prime example of why you should give the points to me, because I stayed within the terms of the debate and my opponent quite simply did not. And that is the end of my affirmative rebuttal.
I appreciate that, Caleb. I will take the next 5 minutes to make my rebuttal and my closing summary. First, I want to start on a statement that you just stated. You said that the opponent does not argue with the criterion. That's clearly false. My first argument was 10 statistical facts that argue why YouTube is being a profitable company currently. The whole argument that we're making right now is whether or not YouTube is a dying industry. Well, I'm sitting here discussing stat after stat, revenue after revenue, different pieces of evidence that decipher how much money YouTube is bringing in. I think the best way to examine if a company is a dying industry is to talk about how much money they're bringing in. Yes, they have other goals than just making money, but the main goal for YouTube is to stay afloat and pay their bills. So I sat here for 5-6 minutes and gave you stat after stat on how they continually make money. Now, secondly, you stated that Danny Duncan does not make money off of YouTube. That's another false statement, and I know that's false because I've watched an interview with Danny Duncan where he states that he does make money off of YouTube, and this interview was published within the last 6 months. He stated that the majority of his money comes from merchandise, which is through his own website, obviously not YouTube, but he stated that he makes money. Yes, the ad revenue is not great, but like I stated, you get $1 to $2 per 1,000 views on YouTube. That is a fact. You cannot argue that. If he gets 5 million views on a video, he's getting paid. So your argument that Danny Duncan does not make money off of YouTube is completely false and invalid. That's not true. Now, I want to kind of go into just my summary and my closing statements within the next few minutes. On one of the articles that I stated and found, it mentions that YouTube is bigger than Twitch. Now, I think Twitch is a huge platform, and I think a lot of people would agree that Twitch is huge. Many video game content creators use Twitch as an outlet to post their gameplay. Now, if YouTube is bigger than Twitch, I think that says a lot about the company and where it's going. And second of all, Caleb, I mentioned how YouTube is up 60% in revenue this year. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with COVID-19, clearly, because people are stuck inside the house and they want to watch YouTube. But that doesn't take away the fact that if your company is up 60% in revenue over the past annual year of 12 months, that's incredible. I know my dad's in sales. He tries to, go up 15% every year in his quota. That's a reasonable market that he can hit. 60% is 4 times of that. That's just incredible to me, man. Now, furthermore, I just want to kind of backtrack and go just to a few more of your arguments. You talk about how YouTube only focuses on money, and I agree. A lot of their focus is on money. But at the end of the day, man, I do think YouTube does a very good job of running a platform that's easy to access and is very enjoyable. And look, if they weren't making money, YouTube wouldn't be a thing. If StreamYard wasn't making money, we wouldn't be using it right now, right? So at some point, they have to make money. Do I think right now, currently, they might be focusing a little bit more on the money aspect than ever? Sure. But who am I to say whether or not that's a good or bad thing? That's completely their decision as a company, and that's the route that they're willing to take. And so I just think that argument also is just another invalid argument. I think YouTube does a lot for its creators. Look at David Dobrik, for instance, man. I mean, David Dobrik started on YouTube. The guy is a multi-millionaire now, not only because of YouTube. Obviously, he has other secondary sources of income, but YouTube is what got him going. I think YouTube is kind of like the entry-level platform to starting your brand, to growing your name. And I think without YouTube, a lot of these people wouldn't be in the places that they're currently in. And I know for me, man, I found this statistic from the New York Times. I'm looking at it right now. And it states that a lot of young kids have decided to not put cable television in their bedroom because they don't see a use for it, as they just watch YouTube. That's incredible. DirecTV is losing business simply because a young kid wants to watch YouTube instead of watching DirecTV. That's awesome. All in all, to wrap up all these last 30 seconds of my closing speech, again, Caleb was arguing that YouTube is a dying industry, and I think he made some good points, but I think he tried to pinpoint me on some few things that I said, and truly they were all invalid. And furthermore, I gave you plenty of statistics, plenty of numbers, and plenty of reasons why YouTube is currently in an upward trend and why it is such a profitable company. Thank you.
Cool, Drew. Thank you. So now I launch into my 2-minute affirmative rebuttal and then my closing statement. Solid. All right. So concerning Danny Duncan, my point was about how his ad revenue is no longer as it would be. His videos are constantly getting demonetized from what they would be. This is seen across many, many different creators, and about how their videos, such as even the biggest ones, such as PewDiePie and all of the bigger content creators, and a lot of them have swearing in them and young adult-like content, that immediately is a flag to get demonetized, even if it's simple like $5 cuss words and stuff like that. This is not what YouTube used to be. There used to be the kind of content that they favored was content like iDubbbz and Filthy Frank, absolutely atrocious videos, which today would immediately get them almost banned. For example, Leafy, one of the biggest content creators which has ever been on the platform, period, got kicked off of YouTube for stating his opinion on another YouTuber. And that immediately just shows you that how YouTube is no longer the platform which it once was, and it has died from that aspect of its creation. Another point that you brought up was how David Dobrik was extremely successful and he was making a lot of money off of YouTube. Well, that's what I was kind of talking about with the algorithm, and that the algorithm does not favor any kind of content. It only favors certain kind of advertisement-like content, because David Dobrik is very much catered towards children. And as you talked about, children watch YouTube a lot, and how YouTube does not favor much things that are kind of outside of that bubble. And so clearly YouTube is biased towards his kind of videos, even allowing him to have his friends on there that are talking about atrocious things. So basically, I think that although you made good points about the different statistics about how YouTube, and I even said it in my affirmative, yes, it is growing in a view count. But I think that my point was about how YouTube has died as a platform of what it once was, which was broadcast yourself. So YouTube used to be a place where people could go on there, do anything, and be whoever they want to be, and people would be able to be inspired by that. YouTube has not become this anymore. They are favoring systems like YouTube Red, which favors you to have a corporate-like $10 a month subscription to YouTube to take off their ads and bring them in money. It's doing things like giving exclusive deals to people like Will Smith or different like Arnold Schwarzenegger to sometimes post a video about how, I don't know, maybe this is my daily routine, or this is my workout routine. And those kind of videos constantly get very high ad revenue, and that's not even counting the exclusive deal that they're doing in the background. This is not favoring the people that are posting a video about how their kid got sent from the getting his wisdom teeth removed, and now he's saying funny things in the back of the car. Those are the kind of videos that used to be very, very popular on YouTube, and now those are no longer on the front line of what YouTube is represented as. So with all that in mind, it is my opinion that YouTube has died as a platform as what it once was. Despite having risen in view count, it has ended its legacy as a platform for the people. Thanks.
All right, great job, guys. So first, I'm going to start off with some compliments for both of you. Drew, I thought you asked some very valid questions in the cross-examination. You used a good use of high-level vocabulary, and I felt like your source placement was very good. Your statistical input was that helped your argument a lot. Side note, I also like Danny Duncan. Guy's a dog. That was a great rebuttal to Caleb's criticism on your claim. And compliment to both of you. I'd like to say good job on both hitting your times. I know that's hard to do. You guys both succeeded in that. Okay, so Caleb, you're very strong in your first affirmative content-wise. You had a lot of good information and a lot of meat for us. You had good answers to Drew's cross-examination questions. That was a very good question on Danny Duncan's income. You gave valid arguments how content has switched to family-wise. Like basically they're targeting family content versus more mature content. Great arguments upon demonetizing, and that was an excellent closing statement. So now I'm going to give some criticism, starting with Drew. I felt defining YouTube was kind of unnecessary for your opening statement. And I'd like if you could have avoided terms like I think. I believe you should change that to I know, just to fully get behind your argument. And then you told Caleb, yes, a great question. I would probably not say that just to stay strong. And then Caleb, some criticism is I didn't like how you stated that YouTube reached an all-time high because I feel it went strongly against you in your argument. So based off of this was a very close debate and totally could have gone either way. It was really tight. But it's hard for me not to pick Drew based off his argument of the 60% increase in revenue. I just feel like that claim is kind of unbeatable. But great job, guys. You both killed it. And nice work.